What's up? It is Wednesday, August 22nd. This is a special 1:33 p.m. Central Time edition of The Breakdown. The reason we're doing it this time is because we have two really special guests here in Chicago today. We have Nate Carden here. He's in from Nashville. He is currently our Director of Programs and Partnerships for Bunker Labs, as well as Tim O'Neill, who's in from Minneapolis, who runs the entire Midwest region, but is also the Director of Chapter Operations here at Bunker Labs. We're going to talk about crowdfunding today. So crowdfunding is an extremely relevant topic for any early stage business. It's an incredible tool and something that we've all had experiences with. So we figured we would just dive right into this like really cool thing that can teach you a lot about your business really, really quickly. So would you guys mind introducing yourselves and like your businesses and backgrounds and experiences with crowdfunding a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Tim O'Neill, Chapter Operations at Bunker Labs. Before that, I ran a company which we started called Fidelis Co. So like the Latin word Fidelis, making bags, packs, carry goods is the term we would use. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps for 7 years as an infantry officer. So that's where a lot of the heritage and the kind of early days of the company came from. And so, yeah, that's eventually how we got there. We'll get into the Kickstarter a little bit, but that's how we launched the company in 2015. So excited to talk about it. Glad to be here.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Nate Carden. I was in the Air Force for 9 years, but 6 of that was in school. So I did the Air Force Academy and then went to grad school right after. When I got out of the military in 2011, I got out with a number of businesses that I wanted to start, most of which failed, and learned a lot. That was my real world MBA. In 2012, I taught at my old high school in Alabama for 3 years. And through that, I taught a comparative religion class at a private Christian school. And by the end of that, came up with the idea that I've since launched 2 Kickstarters for. The name of that company is Ut Unum, which, funny enough, it's Latin as well, and it stands for that they may be one. It's like I'm still working on it and still like trying to figure out what the revenue model for it is.
Yeah.
So it's not immediately apparent with any business like what the revenue model is, and Kickstarter was a huge tool to help me like get closer to understanding what I'm selling.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Huh. So what and your Kickstarter, so Fidelis
Yep.
started out, you launched using Kickstarter, which many companies do. How did you, like, what was that the logic behind it? Was like, how do we get some money in the bank right now?
Yeah. So like the early days of it, so it was myself and a business partner, and I'll be completely honest, I was totally against it. I was like, I don't know, it's too much work, too much energy. There's no clear definition in terms of payoff. There's some significant costs up front. So people, I don't think, always understand that maybe when they first start thinking about it. Like, how much is this video actually going to cost to produce?
Yeah.
You've got to get the prototype to a certain point where you can put it in front of the customer on the video and explain it to them. And so I was definitely not on board, but just through talking about it and the business that we were in was making a hard good, right? So like contract producing things. And so there's a huge upfront cost to that because the manufacturer's not going to take you on board unless you plunk down a considerable amount of money to buy a lot of the things. Because that's just how that sort of business works. And so once we started to get those numbers back, and I kind of knew what that was, Kickstarter offered us a way to deleverage that risk, right? As opposed to just borrowing the money or pulling it out of personal savings or checking or whatever it is. It allowed us to do that. In hindsight, we got to learn a lot more. Happy to get into that, but we definitely thought it was a terrific experience. And yeah, it's how we launched the customer in the spring of 2015.
Very cool. And so that was probably like, crowdfunding was hot in the streets. I mean, it still is relevant, but like really hot in the streets was like 2015, 16.
Yeah.
Where everybody was doing Kickstarters.
Well, and so the thing I always say is, with 2015 or the spring of 2015 is our competitive set. Like this was no longer Kickstarter, I don't know, circa 2012. By 2015, your competitive set was folks like Ashton Kutcher and Spike Lee.
Yeah.
And so this isn't just hang something out there and it's going to run, right? You've got to work and put a lot of effort and energy into it.
Right.
So yeah, it was certainly a lot of fun.
Well, let's talk about that of like just putting something out there. My experience, I'm sure all three of us, our experience with Kickstarters has been like, or crowdfunding in general, has been that it's not ever what you think it's going to be. It's 30 days or whatever you set your goal to be. If you do like kind of the winner take all version on Kickstarter where you don't get any, it's either you hit your goal or all the money goes away. It's 30 days of like constant, almost agony where you're sitting here pushing out newsletters. After a couple of days, you realize your net of friends is like not as big as you thought it was going to be, and then you have to start getting creative. And I think that's maybe deeper down, but what sorts of things that you see during the process that?
Well, I think so. Before we get into like the mechanics of the 30-day period,
sure.
I think there's a fundamental piece of why Kickstarter is a helpful tool in business in general. So there's a trajectory or there's a journey that most businesses travel down, and I think it starts with this grandiose idea which stems from a problem, right? So for me, as I'm like digging in, I'm teaching a comparative religion class. I'm a Christian myself, digging into, and I'm learning things like there are 43,000 plus Christian denominations around the world. That's a huge problem. With each one of those denominations probably thinking that my branch is closer to the truth than all the others. So that presents a number of problems for Christianity in general, which then it's like, well, how do we communicate to non-Christians in a way that in a cohesive way? So that's what Unum, that's where it stemmed from, right? And I'm thinking, I'm going to change the world through this, but then it's like that message doesn't resonate with people, right? Let's be unified, right? So then it was hard to, because I originally started out as a nonprofit and realized how hard it was raising money.
Sure.
So then, like 6 months into trying to raise money and understanding that it had to be sustainable was, what am I going to sell that people will buy? So then I started thinking through, okay, what do I have to offer people? And then that gets into product, and then it gets into messaging. So it's like you have a product that will solve this problem, but like people don't understand what the product is for, so you have to like really craft the message that's appealing. So how you sell is different from what the product that you're giving them necessarily. So like there's this phase, and the further you get down this line, the more successful you're going to be. So for me, when I was, I had come up with this idea of a liturgical planner. So it was a planner that followed the seasons within the Christian calendar.
Okay.
So it allowed people to one, because it's so there's so many Christian holidays with saints' days and all these other things that the whole year gets confusing.
Because every day there's just something going on.
There's something going on, and as a result, you miss the forest for the trees, right? So like the major holidays, which are Easter and then Christmas, they become one of the many holidays.
Yeah.
Right, so it's getting back to the way that the early Christians celebrated these. Like for Easter, it started in February or March, and then for 40 days led up to Easter, and then for a month and a half after Easter was a big celebration. Whereas for us, it's a day, it's a weekend, maybe. So like all of these things were important into thinking about the product that I was creating, which was a planner. At the same time, so I was in Nashville, running the Nashville chapter with Blake Hogan, who's now the Southern Regional Executive Director. And my role, I was teaching the cohort, right? So at the time in Nashville, we were running a 3-month cohort, teaching a lot of the same principles that are in Launch Lab Online and in our VIR program. And one of the big things that I'm teaching is sell your product, get validation on your idea. And here I was about to spend, it's funny how like we can't see the things that everybody else sees.
Right.
So it's easy for me to teach, or to like stand
there,
up there and say like sell your idea
right.
first. But then I get into the mindset of like, man, I've got this schedule that I've created for myself, or this like timeline that I've put on myself of, well, I need to get these books out by October in order to sell before Christmas or whatever else.
Yeah.
And so then I'm freaking out. I'm like, well, I'm about to buy 1,000 books, which 1,000 planners, which would have been $12 or $13 per planner, and then I would have sold them. And Blake looks at me and is like, aren't you you're doing exactly the opposite of what you're telling everybody in the cohort. Yeah. So that's the value of Kickstarter, is it forces you to, it's a way to validate your idea. And I think it trains people to get into this mindset of validating their assumptions before they go out and spend what I would have done $13,000 on 1,000 planners, which the Kickstarter was unsuccessful. So then, like, if I would have spent that, I would have been sitting on 1,000 planners that nobody else has bought.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that, absolutely, validating your idea is critical. Any Kickstarter that's ever gone, like that's what it's for. Is so you don't have to take on that financial risk right away, and that's why I think it can be a valuable tool. I think that like it's like running another startup though, and that's the challenge. And I think because you wanted to bring it back, like I would say, let's go back even further. Like how long, like for you, for example, how long did you start planning out this campaign, and what was the preparation like? Like video, lists, photos.
It's been a few years, but so there's like the product development cycle, which is almost, you could set aside from it. It's almost irrelevant. So the product development cycle for us was probably 6 or 7 months of prototyping and iterating. I think what was more important was making sure that on the first day that we launched the campaign, that we could make a big splash, right? And so what are the preconditions, or like what are the things that need to go into making sure that you can make a big splash on that first day? So for us, it was all about emails. Emails is what matters. Emails is how you connect with people. It's so effective, it's so efficient, and it's so timely, right? And one of the things that we learned, and I don't know if this is still true or not, but one of the things that we had learned was in our process of interviewing previous Kickstarters that had been successful, is kind of what are some of the things that the Kickstarter algorithm cares about, right? Definitely. And so at that time, again, I don't know what it is now these days, but one of the big deals was, and this is the way I explain it to other people, is justifying the Kickstarter who's got this fire hose of traffic to give you in your campaign some of that, right? And so that meant making sure that you have a lot of success early on. So one of the things that we learned was we needed 50 backers, irrespective of the amount, just 50 individual backers.
We're back. Okay. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we learned was you needed 50 individual backers in the first 48 or 24 hours, I can't remember which. And so one of the things is we had to make sure that we knew, not what we thought we could get, but we knew the names of those 50 backers.
So that's your list of like people you know are going to buy your product.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's friends. That's
Yeah.
friends. That's people, and then communicating that to them, right? So like a friend might say, "Yeah, I'll support your campaign," or a backer might say, "Yeah, I'll support your campaign." But communicating to them the importance of it needs to happen in the first 24 hours of when it launches.
Right.
The other precondition that we did was making sure that we built that list over the months before the campaign. So we had prototype samples, when we signed up for, it was a backpack, so we signed up for trade fairs and opportunities to sell it in hosted booths and all those sorts of things, and put an email list out at every place we went to. And people would say, hey, I like it, I want it, can I buy it? And the answer was, I wish you could, but I'll take your email. And so we built up our list, which was thousands of names, doing those activities before the actual launch of the pre-sale.
Yeah. I think it was 2015. Like that, now that there are agencies out there that specifically, make their money off of crowdfunding campaigns, because they'll take 10% of your campaign. Yeah. And it's become this monster industry where billions of dollars are being exchanged on, across all the platforms cumulatively.
So you were building selling this backpack.
Mm-hmm.
How did you sell it did you already have the backpack created?
So we had the prototype in terms of the evolution of creating the product. So we went through the prototyping phase as a proprietary bag, so it wasn't just white labeled or borrowed from somebody else. So we created, it was that, and there was a number of other components. The backpack was kind of the central one, or we thought it was the central one. It ended up being the other bag, the weekend duffel bag. But we worked with the contract manufacturer. We got the final quotes on what the first production run was going to cost us, and the timelines associated with that production run. And then we used that information to execute on the campaign.
How much did you have to pay to get the initial prototype?
Yeah, I think it was more than 30, less than 50,000 per SKU in terms of dollars, and there were two big ones. So 70 to $100,000.
Well,
you knew your math. I think that's really, really important, is to understand your unit economics with this stuff, because Kickstarter is going to take away a percentage, or Indiegogo, they all take a cut.
Yep, credit cards will take 3%, Kickstarter will take 5%.
Yep.
If you're smart, you deleverage your risk by building in success fees. So we built in success fees with our videographers. We paid them less. We paid them a small fee if there was no actual success of the event. We paid them more, on a graduated scale.
Exactly. So usually a credit card.
Yeah, kind of like a credit card, but then tied to future revenue milestones.
Well, what I'm still interested in though is for the video that you made, was there an actual the backpack that you sold to people? Did you already have one of those created?
We did. Yep. So we had the physical product that was done the way we described it, because I think this is something that's bore out in the market, in the Kickstarter market, is people potentially now have a skepticism as to whether or not a product's actually going to be produced, whether that's just a popular myth but it's something that could counteract kind of the success. So we described it as, we've designed it, it's ready, here's the prototype, all we need to do is press print.
But did the manufacturer, we'll create this one for free?
So we invested, I would say, thousands into creating the prototype.
So that's the issue, right? Is that's where most people feel well, why should I do a Kickstarter campaign? Because I'm still going to have to produce one of these. So for a planner, for instance, that's where I got stuck.
Yeah.
Is it's okay, in order to produce the video to show people what I want to create, I've got to create one. But no publishing, no self-publishing, no printer is going to print just one of these things, which I then have to take to a binding company that's going to make the physical moleskin planner. So then at that point, I have to buy 1,000.
Right.
So it's if I'm buying 1,000, why do I even need to do the Kickstarter? How do you?
Well, it's it's cyclical, and we can turn this into kind of a debate. This is not a Kickstarter, but a great example of somebody who never showed off a product, but still made a outrageous amount of money. Dollar Shave Club. You ever see a razor? I guess at one point maybe he holds a razor, whatever. But he explains his product, he explains his market, he explains what they're selling. Subscription-based razors. That video is a minute and a half, goes viral. Millions of subscribers later, he sells it for $1 million to Unilever. So that's an example of something where he had this functioning opportunity here, but it's all about pre-sales, and that's why the subscription model is so great, because you get people, you get 15,000 signups, and then 2 weeks later you fulfill that order but it's guaranteed money coming in. So I think that there's ways around it. I do agree with you. Like, there's plenty of products out there that you need. The buyer's trust is important.
Well, and it's mostly for physical products, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a backpack, you want to know, like, what does this look like? One, does it look cool
Right.
when I'm wearing it? Two, is it functional for what I'm going to be using it for? So like how it looks really matters in the functionality of it. And the same for, I would say, like a planner, for instance.
Yeah.
So like then you get into, it's like, well, a big part of the offer that I'm selling is the product. And so that's where it's hard to like create the video without the product.
Right.
I would say there's a lot of opportunities if you persevere, if you or maybe think outside of the box or try and be original with getting one of them produced. It might be hard and it might be difficult, and it certainly was in our case. But for instance, there are a number of people, like two, three people in the design studio in Bozeman, Montana, as an example, that maybe left North Face or Patagonia or something like that, in our case for backpacks, that just do the prototyping. And you can pay them a retainer fee, you work with them for quarters, they'll produce just one of the bag, and then they'll walk you with all of the designs to the manufacturer. You know, maybe they've got relationships with different ones depending on what's actually being produced. That you get a great product, big spend, tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
What we ended up doing was going to the manufacturer, they had a small prototyping group within their. They certainly hadn't done anything that we were asking them to do. They had a small prototyping group, and we went back and forth, and it took a series of months, and much longer than we expected. But when we initially went to them, we sold them on this like promise of what it could be in the future. And there's a little bit of like, hey,
Take a chance.
I hope you can come along with us, and they're stepping out there with you. And so we put a little bit of skin in the game so that they were excited about it, and then you just kind of do that dance back and forth. And ultimately, they were the ones that ended up producing not only the prototype that we featured on the Kickstarter, but also produced the bag in the long run.
What's interesting, what I took away from the first Kickstarter that I did, which wasn't successful, right, is thankfully I didn't buy the 1,000 books.
Yeah.
And thankfully it wasn't successful because like in the process of selling it, there were a couple hundred people that were really in love with the idea.
Sure.
Who then were like, hey, it wasn't successful, but I still want one of these. What can you do?
Right.
And it was only then that I was like, I went and looked for a smaller publisher that could do maybe not the 100% solution that I was looking for, but an 80% solution.
Yeah.
And I realized and I got that, so I sold 100 planners, and the people that bought them really liked them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like what it does is it helps you like narrow your dream solution down to what's essential and what's the offer that people are really buying.
Yeah. That's powerful. I mean, it completely changes your mind on how when you start your next thing, or you want to do another campaign, it's going to completely change your mind on how you do it. I think it's a huge learning process. I think there are a couple of things that you like to know right off the bat is like a big challenge for many is video. Like, and it is. There are agencies out there that will do video work, or they'll help you produce video in exchange for a percentage of your campaign. Sometimes, regardless if it's successful or not, so try to But there's other ways, and we talked about this yesterday. Like being able to go and hire people for a month of work and making like promises, and it's a slippery slope. But like, if you can guarantee that your Kickstarter is going to make $100,000, and you had 5 people working for 25% of that, well, if your margins are really high, then you'll be fine. Like, it's money you never had in the first place. Now you have this market, you validation, you have customers. Like, that's great. So there's ways to use a Kickstarter as this thing. Like, do some video work for me now, and I'll pay you in a month and a half. Like, make my video now. I'm going to launch this thing, make $50,000, and then I'll pay you the $5,000 that I owe you. So it's this really cool way to like leverage everything. I think the one thing you touched on is that you have this personal list, and that's really important. Is like having this list of almost guarantees, the people that are gonna 100% will back you, that you can like text or email and say like, hey, you know, why didn't you give me the money? Like,
Yeah.
like, I
Well,
need
knowing
to
it was
front page.
50 too is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because also if you hit your goal within 24 hours, like this is what, you know, like the dream scenario is you seed, you know, like let's say your goal is $25,000,
Then it's only
and then you seed that 25. So you go to all these people and say, I need $25,000 of guarantees.
Mhm.
You hit that goal, then you're on the front page of Kickstarter, and then now all these random organic users that are just on Kickstarter are like, cool, like let's check out this planner. Like I'm in, whatever. I want to see this guy succeed,
yeah.
and here you are. So there's a lot of like little. I mean, their algorithm is complicated, but I know like you know you can also look for opportunities. Like Indiegogo does things like for global good businesses. They'll highlight you. You know, they'll put you on their Instagram. They'll put you in their newsletter. They'll highlight you while your campaign's going to make sure that your campaign gets funded. And worked with somebody who's done that before and timed it like perfectly, and like it was always great.
Yeah, I would also share a couple other like tactics that might be helpful for the audience. You know, one is be aware of your goal. I've seen a lot of organizations, and some of it is setting expectations. So you can always cancel a campaign, right? So I've seen a lot of people that have launched Kickstarters, and they make the goal relatively low so that they cross that threshold really quickly.
Sure.
And then it gives a perception that there's kind of outstretched gains or even more success than you necessarily needed to have. And so then there's something to say, hey, we're at 300% funded in 24 hours, as opposed to saying, you know, we're only 100% funded in the first.
It's a headline grabber.
It is. It's much more of a headline grabber. So I think that's one way of kind of being aware of it and making sure you're touching on it. The other thing is, I would pursue Kickstarter for like the cost of acquisition for customers. I was amazed at the amount of international customers we had. We had people buy bags in Italy and Mexico, New Zealand, you know, several from India. There's no way I would have had contact with those people. That they can become lifetime customers of your company, and you're not going to get access to them other than through Kickstarter, or at least as cheap of a way,
Right.
unless you go specifically through Kickstarter. So I thought that was really insightful and a really kind of great way of going about it. And then the other thing is like find other campaigns that have either been picked up by the press or that other people have supported, and be a supporter of those, and start to follow along and see what they're doing, and be active with campaign, you know, notifications throughout the process. Right? We hit our goal, which was $20,000 in the first 48 hours. You know, so we'd send out a notification that said, hey, thank you very much, tell a friend, here's the link. A lot of people do Facebook Live posts now on Saturday or Sunday night so that they can kind of keep that interest stoked. So I think there's a lot of ways of keeping it active and relevant.
Just don't stop. It's 30 days.
Well, it's a business degree in the 30-day period.
Yeah.
I mean, a Kickstarter campaign is probably like the best training for entrepreneurship out there, because like a lot of the learning that happens in entrepreneurship is when you're outside of the building, right? You're either selling or you're doing customer interviews.
Yeah.
But selling, like traditionally, is what people think of like first contact. Most people don't think. I mean, we're trying to teach people or like help people understand that your first contact can be a customer interview.
Yeah.
But like with what Kickstarter does, it's like practice selling something, which is what businesses do, is selling something. And so that you learn so much when you do that for the first time, which, you know, it forces you to get there a lot quicker rather than spending years and tens of thousands of dollars in some cases building something only to sell it then and nobody wants it. So you learn that quick in Kickstarter.
Love it. Well, thanks, guys. I mean, I think you guys got meetings, right?
Yeah.
I see Jenny's outside.
Yeah.
So to be respectful of time, I just want to say thank you very much, and have you on soon again. And what else is new? I don't know, real quick. What's next?
Yeah, what's next? Good question. The North Regional Summit in Minneapolis on October 9th. If you're in, we'll just say the northern part of the country, you should be there. It's during Twin Cities Startup Week, so there's a lot of activity. Techstars got an event that evening. There's one the night before. And so October 9th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Find it by going to bucklelabs.org.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, to Tim's point, we're right in the middle of muster season coming up. There's going to be 4 musters on the West Coast: L.A., San Francisco, Seattle, and Bozeman.
For those who don't know, can you explain what a muster is?
Yeah, so a muster is our annual entrepreneurship conference. It's like it's a ton of inspirational speakers. It's a ton of other veteran entrepreneurs. It's a way to network. It's a way to learn, and then just be a part of the community.
Sure.
So, like, it's going to be happening around the country. It's like over the next 6 weeks. So, go to bunkerlabs.org and find the muster in your region.
We have Raleigh, Durham, Bozeman, Montana, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles between September 20th and the end of October.
Yep.
In Minneapolis.
And Minneapolis, October 9th, correct?
You got it.
All right, there we go. All right, well, thank you very much. We will be back next week, so tune in. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks.
guys.